Hello, everyone. I'm Captain Logan, and look, once again, it's the Day Ghost. Hello, Austin. How are you, man?
Hey, how's it going? It's good to be back for this month of request.
I know we're gonna have so much request. This show, we always, of course, do a request, but then, so like we're playing like it starts today, but like we always do a request on Tuesdays. We're kind of just doing our regular stuff, but then we're also throughout the month going to be doing several other requests. Fridays we're going to be doing something from an old list of requests of things that I have not gotten to, and then rewinds all month will also be requested rewinds, and I might try to sneak in a couple of other things in here and there. But anyway, yeah, so it is indeed request month, and this is officially the start of that, but you can't give us too many points for that because we had to do a request today. Anyway, Austin, what are we reviewing tonight, sir?
We are reviewing the first two episodes of Invincible, which I don't know if you remember when this show came out. I think like a week before it launched, I went, "Oh, hey, that Invincible show is coming out. We should probably do a review of that show," because we had just done, what was it, the Falcon Winter Soldier, I think.
Oh, is that
And
around when that happened? I couldn't remember when this came
I
out.
think I want to say it was like a June, like June-ish,
It feels
and
like it's been
then
forever. I really thought the second
yeah.
season must have already dropped for this.
Yeah, and I think I kind of figured that too. Um, but then it fell through because you had twins.
Is that what it was? It that week?
It was like right before. Like I want to say that there was probably like an episode or two, maybe three out. But we were obviously we're gonna wait till it finished.
So Dylan Muschtiello requested this on Patreon. Thanks a bunch to Dylan. I'm really glad that he did this. This is a thing that I've been wanting to do since it dropped. I've been curious about it. I wanted. It wasn't like The Boys where I was like everybody's saying great things about this, but like I don't care right off. It's not my sensibilities. Like I don't really want to look at it. And then we got a request for that. And we had to do the pilot. But this was a thing that I put off for a long time just because I wanted to read the comics first and never got around to doing that. And I have this thing where I'll like want to look at source material first with a certain thing, but then I know I'm going to want to review the source material. So I have to set it up so that I have time to read the thing and review it, and then I won't have that in my day-to-day in my schedule, and so then I just won't get to it. So anyway,
I have that
excuses
too.
aside, we're finally looking at the first two episodes of Invincible. The reason just two, because some folks before we started the show were kind of asking like, why not just do the whole season? It's only 8 episodes. We don't do full season requests on ReQuest, and we wouldn't have with everything else going on. It would just be unreasonable to ask Austin on top of myself, like go ahead and watch all of this, and then let's do a whole like spoiler cast sort of thing as like a first impression video. So we do just in case you ever want to request a TV show, we do like a first impressions video, and then sometimes down the road, if I really want to, I'll watch the rest of it and do a whole season overview if I get to it. But so I'm not promising that with this. I will say right away, and I forgot to pull my sign out, I will say right away that I am certainly intrigued enough with this to keep watching it, and whether I review it or not, I will finish the season. At some point, if not this week. But anyway, so like I said, I'm glad Dylan asked us to do this. I did not get around to reading any of the comics, and again, I've always meant to because I like Kirkman. I really like what Walking Dead I've read. I read Marvel Zombies years ago before he was thought of as the zombie guy, and even though some of my friends don't care for that book, I've always loved Marvel Zombies. So like, I have a thing for Kirkman. He tends to turn in work that is just really of a caliber, and he's versatile. He tends to get violent, although he's done some kid stuff too that isn't, but he's real versatile, and there's always a lot of heart and humanity to his work, regardless of what genre it's in and who the audience is. And that's always the central common denominator with his stuff. So like, you can always expect quality work from Kirkman.
Yeah, well, and with the diversity thing, like I mean, he was in that Paramount Transformers writers group for like a week and then left. Like
I know, but a
he
bunch
jumps
of
around
people
a lot.
were, right?
Yeah,
Wasn't
which is funny
who
that
else
he.
was in that? Wasn't Game in there or something? Maybe it wasn't Game. I forget who.
I don't know.
No,
I'm not.
no, it couldn't have been him. But there were some
Yeah,
like heavy hitter writers that were in that room for a minute. Maybe JMS was in. I can't remember. People
yeah,
you've heard of were in that room.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm trying to think. I don't know if I've ever actually read a Robert Kirkman thing. I could be wrong. Like, I could just be blanking out on something that he's written.
Because you've
But
still not read Marvel Zombies, even though we
no.
did
Oh,
Deceased together.
yeah. I read the first like volume of Walking Dead, so I guess that does count. But I read it when I was like, I don't know, 13, I think. So I don't remember it super well.
I try not to have a reaction whenever you talk about how young you were reading things, where I was like, already an adult with children when they came out. But anyway, Invincible. What was your first impression of this? Maybe just do a standard sign flip, best thing, worst
Mhm.
thing, and we'll get into a little bit of a discussion about it.
Okay, so I have like a little bit of that the boys thing that you have with Invincible, not to the degree of, oh, it's not really my thing in the first place, but just from the fact that it was initially I was interested to see it. I was like, oh, okay, this could be good. I'm hearing good things, and then for months on end, all I heard was, oh, Invincible's so good, you have to watch it, you have to watch it, and
Yeah,
eventually it was like. Okay, like yeah, I've kind of lost interest because it's been like shoved in my face a bit too much.
and it's on us to some degree because
It is, of
again, I
course.
had kids that week, not just one but two. But you do if you'd gotten in on the ground floor, you wouldn't have that with it.
No, exactly. No, I also had two kids that came in and interrupted the reason I was going to watch it. But no, at the end of the day, like it was good to finally get to this, and I'm definitely feeling it. Like I'll give it a green sign. I really liked the first episode. The second episode, I was a little like, I'm not as crazy about it as much as the first one. But it was still a good episode.
Yeah, and while the episode, this is another one of those shows, right, where like the episodes have a beginning, middle, and end. So it's not the kind of thing where there's no rhyme or reason to why an episode like starts where it does or ends where it does. But it is also an ongoing narrative, and a lot of serialized shows will have a second episode that just cannot begin to live up to the pilot, being
Yeah,
still
and
kind of a self-contained thing to some degree.
mhm. Well, that's something I do have to give this show is that one thing I really want from just comic book TV in general is just more episodic stuff. Like,
Yeah.
there's no reason, like let's say Daredevil, for example. Like, why can't you just have an episode where he's doing whatever and then somebody robs a bank and then he's going to deal with that for an episode? Like, I don't really need it to be, a 13-hour movie. That's not to say that Daredevil's a bad show. That was just, the first example that came to my mind.
Yeah, because
But
stuff would come up.
yeah, exactly, yeah. And for me personally, I just prefer like that kind of episodic TV with like you can have a through line, obviously, but it makes it easier for me to watch it going back to it because it's not a full commitment of okay, this is a show, but really it's just one long movie.
Yeah, where you kind of feel this is what binge watching has done to TV making, right? In TV
Mhm.
watching, where you get hooked. So what happened for a while is we would get hooked on a show, and you would want to just like keep watching it because you can't look away. But then we started making TV shows for binging, which is the same thing as making a movie you're not supposed to get up in the middle of. Like that's all. So you're
Yeah.
right. Like the old week to week for even when we started in the 2000s, getting to where most things were serialized except for like procedural police stuff and things like that. It became about like week to week you'd have chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, but there would be a clear like beginning and end point where and comic issues when this is done right tend to have this also where it's easy to get off of it and then come back in. It's not like something uh, like a 24 or something where it's like what happened last hour like hours of a day.
Mhm.
So this is kind of going back to that sort of storytelling, and I think this translates comic book storytelling to screen about as well as anything I've seen.
Yeah, and especially that like at the older comic book storytelling, right? Where okay, like here's your episode, but this episode, while continuing the overall narrative, like here's the villain of this episode, and then here's the villain of that episode, and who knows, maybe that alien stuff in episode 2. Oh, wait. What am I even talking about? Of course, it can't move forward. For some reason, I like blanked out the ending of that episode in my
That's
head as
okay.
I was saying that.
I actually was doing that a little bit too. Full disclosure, I did actually end up watching these episodes twice. Because there was enough going on, I was afraid that I might be missing stuff, and like I wouldn't appreciate some of the setup and payoff and stuff, and just certain details would leave me. And I was really glad I did, because there's some bookended stuff that I didn't really pick up on in the first place. I didn't even catch in the second episode. Minor spoilers right now. This is not going to be a big deal to anybody. I'm sure most people watching this have seen this show, but I didn't even realize initially that the kid and his dad at the beginning of the second episode in Europe.
Oh yeah, that they come back in the
or the same. It's the same guy that's in the first episode. I kind of wish somehow that could continue, where you have like I assume that maybe for a while every episode will open with checking back in on them. I hope it does, but I thought it'd be fun if, like, the first episode opens at the White House and the second episode opens at in Britain,
Buckingham Palace.
At the palace. Yes, it'd be really fun if every episode opened at like wherever the leader of a country is. Anyway, I digress.
Yeah, that's kind of fun between both episodes. It would be cool if they continued that moving forward. And the dad's an actor that is somebody, but I can't remember offhand now. There
were several voices I felt like I recognized, but didn't look up.
It's like 50% of everybody is. Oh my god! Now I'm blanking his name. Oh my god, he's a big voice actor that's in a ton of stuff. I can't think of what his name is. And then the other 50% are all celebrity people. A lot of people in like sitcom stuff.
Yep. So, what's your best thing, worst thing?
What is my best thing? Yeah. My best thing is. I guess I'll give it to the main character, I guess. I don't know. I think that stuff's pretty good. It kind of fills that void of not having like a good Spider-Man show for the last decade.
Yeah, absolutely it does.
Mm-hmm. Worst thing?
Sorry, I was distracted because I was looking at voices trying to find the one you were talking about, and I didn't realize that Zachary Quinto was Robot, and that just made my brain explode.
Yeah, because when he started talking, I was like, "Oh, that's somebody. Who is that?"
I didn't recognize his voice at all. That's awesome.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of just like, weird castings like that where we just, threw people in there. It's pretty good. It's overall a really good voice cast.
Well, yeah, and Simmons, we gotta say real quick, is like perfect. Like, there's nobody better. For that part for Omni-Man. And yet, when he first started talking, I was like, I'm very distracted by this. Like, I know this voice too well, and it's bothering me. And after about 2 or 3 scenes of that, it started falling into place, and he was just the voice of that character. And then once I was seeing where he was going with him, where there's kind of this ominous thing, and you can't trust that character, and he might be the villain of the show, I was like, okay, see, now I see why he has to be J.K. Simmons. There's no one else to play this role.
Yeah, I had that to an extent where just initially it's like, okay, yeah, that's J.K. Simmons because he's got such a recognizable voice. And I think part of it is that he has the face of J. Jonah Jameson.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, okay. But after like a scene or two, you just kind of settle into it.
I was thinking Jameson a lot less and his character a lot more from Whiplash. Like,
which I've never seen. But
after you get the end of the big surprise, like nobody can stop talking about it. The reason the show was popular, I would argue, the ending of the big shocker ending of the first episode. I just the whole second episode once he gets revived, I kept waiting for him to yell at his son, "Not my tempo."
Well, it was really weird that they brought Weird Al in for that one scene. I don't know what that was about.
What are you talking about?
Where he just started yelling at Weird Al because he was playing his accordion wrong.
That doesn't happen. So anyway, yeah. So what's your least favorite thing about the show?
My least favorite thing, it's not even necessarily that it's bad, it's just I wasn't as invested in like the alien plot in
You can be
the second
subjective.
episode.
That's fine.
Yeah, that's basically it. I just I don't know. It was okay, I guess.
That w- I think it works because it's just kind of a I was gonna say fun throwaway story, but like it serves a lot of purposes, right? Like
No, of course.
you need it's a good time for a convenient, but like well not convenient, like it's inconvenient, like definition of inconvenient, right? Where it's like you lose. I don't know how to talk about this without just spoiling stuff, but like so we're spoiling things in this video. You lose your main superheroes, and then you've got a coming of age story with a kid that's learning to be a superhero, and then immediately you have an alien invasion he can't handle. And what's fun about it is the kind of sci-fi MacGuffin of how their world works, where they just I like the joke of they keep coming back, figuring out different ways to get around the fact that they age too fast in our dimension because where they're from, time moves at a different rate. And so like they come here the first time and they just start dying because they get too old, and then which you'd think would happen more gradually, but whatever. And then the second time they come in with armbands, and so we just blow those up. And the third time they're like really super advanced. They've taken a little bit more time, and now there's like nothing we can do to them. That all is kind of fun, but at the same time, it also helps to show Invincible like just how like real things can get and how scary being a superhero is. So while it's this like kind of and I feel like there's this balance constantly with this show. There's this kind of fun kitschiness to the sci-fi element of that, and it's also like really freaking brutal and kind of hard to look at, like all at the same time. Because I guess the whole point is, even though we have a real absurd kind of comic booky world, it's about the realism within the framework of that, within the internal logic of that. And so like being a superhero is fun sometimes, but you know he's invincible and everybody else is very vincible, and so
When you need that beat of
I think that really works. But I get why it wasn't just
the
your
new
thing,
villain
so you
thing.
couldn't get into it. But but that was one of the things I kind of appreciated about it, was that it was just a like one and done episode plot that moves the ideas and the overarching character arc pretty far forward.
Yeah. No, it's that thing that you kind of need where it's the like, okay, here is, the villain that comes in that we need for him like to be his first villain and when all the heroes are gone that they have to struggle with. But it was also like the type of issue that in a comic I'd be like, I don't really care as much about this villain plot. Like I'm waiting for like the next issue. So it's not really their fault. Like it does capture something I feel when reading comics sometimes. But like everything around that was good. It's just I wasn't really as into that like that villain stuff. I don't know. This show is really good overall, so it's kind of hard to give it a worse thing. But I just wasn't as invested into that.
Yeah, the stuff I don't like ends up being taste issue for the most part as well. Like I think the only I guess I'll start with bad stuff since we're piggybacking off of what you just said. The only real negative I think I give it that's maybe not as subjective is just there are so many characters that in just a couple of episodes, and maybe people will get more fleshed out as it goes along, that there are a couple of characters that I could kind of do without that I'm having a hard time not seeing as super one note right now and not good enough for this material because Kirkman does such a good job of making everybody like well-rounded and believable and real people. So like the kind of jerk face guy on the teen team isn't doing anything for me yet, and I'm having a hard time believing that that Eve would even be dating him. So like there's characters like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Like, this is a stereotype, but it's too good, and the show is too good for that. And like you've got your Flash Thompson type, which by the way, Todd is just the right name for that guy. Like, he's a Todd. That is the correct name for that guy. And he does so he kind of fills that, you know, classic high school bully stereotype, but at the same time he's also like Flash Thompson in that you start to see some like flashes of humanity in him too. And I guess just with one episode with that other guy on Teen Team, I can't even remember his name right now, Rex something, Rexplode.
Yeah,
that's his name.
That's what it is. Well, that's somebody where I've seen them in like sitcom stuff, so I just see the actor. Like, I don't really see the character. So
sure.
It's one of those, because he's not super developed. You're right.
But maybe he'll get there. Like, that's the problem with breaking down just a couple of episodes of an 8-episode season, which is why I would understand, you know, people being kind of frustrated that we're not just talking about the whole season. But this is a request, and this is what we have time for with this show. So maybe eventually. But anyway, but
no, in that way it sorry, no, go ahead.
No, you're fine. What were you gonna say?
Oh, I was gonna say, in that way, because recently I started reading the Kirby Lee Fantastic Four, because that's one of my big Marvel blind spots.
Yeah.
And in that way, it kind of captures that feeling of, you have like 22 pages, so you have to somehow balance, actual character stuff with the big overall plot with the villain. So typically you'll get maybe overall like a page of development for the characers, or like
and
maybe
the rest
like
of it's just fighting.
And the rest of it's just fighting. So the bringing out the characters is happening like over several issues, and it's maybe got like that to a degree with how many characters there are.
No, absolutely. I think maybe it introduces too many too quickly, but it also is doing that, at least in the first episode, for a reason, because it's a bait and switch. Yeah. So, like, it's trying to get you invested in their version of the Justice League, and then you get to the end and, we're not going to have them anymore because we're going to brutally murder all of them. But then, in the very next episode, you're introducing 4 more when you just got rid of, 6. So we're back to very close to the number of characters we had in the first place. And I'm not even saying it's too many to keep track of where, I'm forgetting, okay, who do we have? Like they're all distinct enough. It's just...
They're just not fully drawn out.
Yeah, in just a couple of episodes, some of them I haven't lived with enough yet, and sometimes they kind of get in the way of the stuff that I'm most interested in, because and that's a testament to how good the writing is, that I care this much about my protagonist that sometimes I just want the huge supporting cast to get out of the way for a second, so that I can spend more time with this kid trying to learn about his powers and figure out who he wants to be, and do the superhero origin stuff. And it's a really good, solid superhero origin story. And there's, of course, a lot of retread and repackaging and retooling and finding fresh ways to do things you've done before. One of my favorite things about this show, I was going to put in another worst thing, which is just it's more violent than my taste allows for. I don't know if it needs to be quite as violent as it is. It's another one of those things where I can't decide if it's a little bit gratuitous about that, where I'm supposed to be like reveling in that, or if I'm supposed to be horrified by it. Because when it starts and it's that messed up, I'm kind of horrified. And you go through a whole first episode where it's a little rougher than your average superhero thing, but it doesn't go to punching straight through guys' faces and blowing up people and eviscerating folks and ripping them apart and stuff. And then the whole last scene is all of that. And then the second episode, there's a ton of that. And I get why it needs to be violent. I don't know that it needs to be like a slaughter fest. So I'm on the fence about that. It's not to my taste, so I don't like it, but I can't decide if it needs to be there. But real quick, where are you with the violence on it?
Well, I don't know. To me, it's violence is funny. So.
Okay, but that could be a problem in this context.
I know, I'm just joking, but no, I think the violence is mainly just there to spell out, how kind of messed up stuff is.
Usually with a thing like this, I would say like get some of that going real early so that uh, you can telegraph for the audience what it's gonna be. But
Mhm.
I think in this case, again, it's just the level of it I'm not sure about. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
I think I liked being blindsided by the fact that it would go to some of those places the way it did. Like it definitely won me over on that whole thing. Because I'm praising things all the time for like setting the stage, giving me the tone right away. But this is one of those things where it knows what its tone is going to be, and it can surprise me by that. So the whole first episode sets the tone, but it doesn't have to do it in 5 minutes, and I think that's fine,
Mhm.
just because of the kind of story that they're telling.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and they chose to give it more of a like really memorable like shock first episode ending, kind of like what Jessica Jones has, where it's the type of ending for your first episode that makes you go like, "Oh my God, I can't believe that just happened." On to episode two.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Um, I think my favorite thing about this so far is just like a blend of superhero, how do I put it, like subgenres, or just like all of the different things that they're cribbing from. Like it's Spider-Man if he was in a DC universe that is sort of like a supreme power or something. Like it's a blend of so many different things. Even the other like really rough and tumble, like repackaged super adult versions of like DC and Marvel stuff is in here. And that's one thing that's really cool about it is that it's aware of that stuff. It doesn't feel like it's just another one of those. Not let's just do evil Superman again. Let's just do another like adult messed up Justice League again. You've never seen this before. Let's shock you with it. It seems aware of all of that stuff, and so like there's some golden and silver and modern age, and if you like postmodern superhero all blended together. It's so far not a cynical piece. Contrasting it to something like The Boys that is intentionally cynical, like it has to be to tell the story it's telling. This is like let's have that kind of rough and tumble realism, but our heroes can, at least some of them or most of them, can actually still be heroes. So like in that way, it feels like a 21st century. I don't know if this is gonna make any sense. It feels like a 21st century Marvel, where it's like you had golden age or getting into the silver age where superheroes like by the 60s were like perfect, stalwart, did no wrong, and then Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, those guys said, well, let's do a more like realistic thing, but the heroes are still heroes. And this is taking that like a few steps further, but it's like that again, if that makes
Mhm.
any sense.
Yeah, and this is almost like one of the Marvel 70s books where like you have the 60s stuff that's already set up and it's already there, and then you're introducing, this newer character
Yeah,
into that. Yeah.
because it's
No, I
like,
agree with that.
and what it sort of feels like is Spider-Man gets his powers and walks into the DC universe,
Mhm.
but like it's an already kind of more realistic DC universe. But I just think it's really interesting that most of the archetypes they're going to are not Marvel archetypes, except for their hero.
Yeah,
At
yeah, it's
least
pretty much it. It's mainly looking at DC
at
and
least so far. Yeah, well, because their version of the Justice League is all Justice League analogs,
yeah,
like all
yeah,
of them.
exactly.
And then when you get to the teen team, I'm still seeing mostly DC stuff there, and we've heard mention of other teams that we haven't gotten yet. So we'll see
Mhm.
if down the line we start seeing more stuff that resembles Marvel. But even like their paranormal investigator guy that comes from hell. He feels like a John Constantine type, or like John Constantine fused with Etrigan. Maybe that was kind of the vibe I was getting. And
And
you could say Hellboy, but that's still at least not Marvel. Like,
that's what I was gonna say. As I was gonna say, and throw Hellboy into that because it's like a mix between those three. But yeah, there's not a ton of Marvel outside of the main character. Which the Hellboy character thing I wanted to mention too, because earlier you were talking about just kind of how expanded the roster of characters is, and how sometimes you kind of feel like you wish some of them were cut down so we could be more with the main
And
character.
let me say, juggled surprisingly well.
Yeah, no, of course.
But they're just getting in the way of what I want to get out of this. I'm interested in the father-son story, especially knowing that the father is probably the bad guy.
Hmm. Yeah, no, of course. That type of stuff, I don't know, it's just kind of superhero TV where it's like there has to be a ton of subplots that are kind of happening that we have to cut to. So you get, your leader of S.H.I.E.L.D., which I guess is the other Marvel thing.
That's true.
You
Well, he could,
dealing with like Hellboy and
yes,
stuff.
but he could be Amanda Waller and all of that also. Like they both have like the covert agency that like kind of helps out the superheroes.
Yeah, but unless like it changes, but it's not like as villainous as Amanda Waller is,
Well, no,
or as
that's
like,
true, but that's more her fault than it is the agency. I think like
yeah.
she wouldn't have to be like that. That's just Amanda Waller. But like
No,
what?
Amanda Waller's a crazy
But
person.
what like Checkmate or I mean I guess they are usually like it's Black Ops before it's what Shield is, right?
Hmm.
Because would you
Yeah,
call Shield Black Ops? I guess you wouldn't.
yeah. I don't know. They're just kind of I don't know. They're like a spy thing, but kind of separated from country. So I guess in that way it is more Amanda Waller because it is like at least I think isn't it supposed to be the U.S. funded or like the U.S. government?
Yeah. But I guess all I'm saying is the flavor of it feels more DC than it does Marvel. But then your
Oh no,
central character
yeah,
is Spider-Man.
yeah. No, as a whole, it was just in the moment while saying it, I was like, oh wait, I guess that's the other Marvel things. You kind of have Shield.
Yeah, no, of course. We could sit here and do this all day with stuff.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, the point I was just getting with
Yeah,
that
sorry,
was
sorry.
just that it's got that like TV show thing of there's a ton of subplots and there's like kind of moments where you go, oh, I wish we maybe focused on this aspect a little bit more. Like I really like the whole thing with Invincible and the person he tries to save and is brought to the
That's
hospital.
great.
I kind of wish we got a little bit more of it, but
You know,
what is there is good.
yeah, I mean, I don't mean to argue with you every time you bring up a point. I just feel like that uh, it was cool that those characters get no interplay at all.
Hmm.
Like
No,
I
sure.
think I
I don't need
appreciate
a
that.
scene of them talking.
Oh, okay, okay.
That's not what I mean by like I wish they got more screen time.
I just don't even know what else
Uh,
you do with it. Like,
I think you could like have him maybe go and like I don't know, like maybe talk about it with another character a little bit more or something, or have him go and visit her while she's in the hospital.
yeah.
I'm not entirely sure,
Do
but
you
it just
think is part of your reservation with the second episode maybe that this like horrendous thing happens and his father's in the hospital and of course their Justice League has been taken out but he doesn't even know that yet and then he's got to just go and then he's dealing with this alien invasion, everything's insane, but then he also has to just kind of do business as usual. Like is that kind of a problem for you where like at the same
um
time as we're dealing with like the potential trauma of all of that, he's also dealing with like his potential dating life and
yeah, yeah, and I mean I think we could also maybe use from a bit more screen time at the school. There seems to just be like one hallway that all of the school stuff takes place in.
oh they went
Uh,
to they went to the cafeteria.
yeah, that's true. They got one other spot. But like he's got like a friend, and I guess it does help to showcase that the hero stuff is taking over that, so it does make sense to not show them a ton.
Yeah,
But we maybe could have had a little bit more of them at the start too. Like we're dealing with that other girl that likes him too, and I think she's been in
Amber.
like Amber, yeah, and she's been in like two scenes in his head. I think like one line.
She's got a little bit more to do than that. Yeah, like I felt that way too, and then watching it a second time, she's more present than I gave her credit for.
Oh, okay. Is it kind of like an MJ and Homecoming thing, where the first time you go like, oh, that character's like not even here, and then on repeat viewings you go, oh, she's like here, there, like
Yeah,
she's kind of all over it.
it's kind of like that where well because they do the kind of typical love triangle thing where she is impressed with him because he tried to save her from a bully, and then she ends up saving him from a bully. So we kind of, I had a lot of respect for how that was handled, where like it's modernized and not all at the same time, where like we do kind of flip it, where she has to be the strong female character that has agency and isn't just a damsel in distress, and like comes in and sort of rescues him, but he's still allowed to try, and I appreciate that a lot. You know,
Yeah.
so like there's kind of a back and forth thing with them, so that's good. But anyway, so she's kind of following him around after that, interested in him romantically, and then in the second episode, she sees him with Eve, and is worried that he's not interested in her now. And then she goes into the cafeteria later and talks to his friend and asks if he's dating Eve. So she has a number of scenes.
Oh, okay, so it's more than I figured. And I assume she's going to get a lot more to do. Because that's Zazie Beetz, the woman who plays Domino in Deadpool 2.
Is that who that is?
Yeah.
I love her in that movie. I don't think I've ever seen her in anything else. I love her.
Oh, she's in Joker as well.
Oh, is that also who that is?
Yeah.
If I knew that, I'd forgotten about it. Okay. Well, apparently I just really love this actress.
No, and she's pretty good in like the little bit she gets to do. Like I said, the entire cast is overall pretty good.
I wanted Domino to get a spinoff. I really did. I thought she was delightful in that movie.
Well, she'll get a Disney Plus show. Just wait.
You know what? That's fine with me. I'll be the only person that will watch it. That's fine with me. I'll take it.
That's okay. That's like me with the Agatha Harkness show, because there's supposed to be a Man-Thing character in that show, so I'm like, dang it. You have to be the only person that watches this.
Is that still happening?
Yeah, that was part of their...
Oh, just the way you were talking about it, I thought maybe it got canceled and I hadn't heard about it.
Oh, no, it's not.
They're not going to cancel things.
No, Disney actually releases things.
It's not like Warner Brothers after being taken over by Discovery. We'll talk about that on Thursday, folks. The beginning of this video, or before we started going live, the comments were all just, hey, Batgirl got canceled. We'll talk about it. Anyway, Austin, my big takeaway from this is this is what we need to do with more comic book adaptations at large. Just backing off for a second, looking at this project as an adaptation and as a project. I praised, and this whole thing still hurts my feelings because we have an Invincible show and The Boys, and The Tick got canceled, and like both of those are on the same network, and both of them doing some of the same sorts of things that The Tick is, both adapted from independent stuff. Invincible and Tick had a crossover comic, like it's really sad. I wonder if The Tick had come after these two shows, if it had stayed on, because its pilot predates both of these. And that kind of hurts my feelings. But what I was going to say is I praised The Tick a lot for being a live-action half-hour show. Like, not everything has to be an hour. Not everything has to take that long to tell the story that you're telling. And then I've got the reverse feeling with this where I'm like, not all cartoons have to be 25 minutes, Like, I'm having a somewhat similar thing that I did to Spider-Verse with this, and this might sound like a really silly thing to say, Austin, but this is one of those things that kind of proves that not everything has to be done in live action to give it credibility, of course, and as a country, America just needs to finally freaking learn this from the Japanese, that like we can have serious adult shows where you're invested in characters and the characters just happen to be drawn, but the pacing can be really similar to live action. I didn't always feel like I was watching a cartoon, an animated show watching this. The pacing is done almost exactly like I feel like it would be if in a lot of like the progression of scenes and the organization of scenes, the cinematography, if money were no object as far as action goes, like a lot of it feels exactly like you do it in live action. It just happens to be animated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not something like, say, Superman Man of Tomorrow, where that movie's awesome, but if that were to be a live action movie, it would have to be beefed out because it's definitely cut down to be like a short animated movie. Like, this is just, like you said, it could easily just be live action.
Yeah, this is just a TV show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. No, I want this treatment for Hellboy, because that's one of my favorite comic book series of all time, and I like the movies, but I don't think any of them really do it justice. So, like,
I
I
want
want
it.
this where you kind of take that art style and try to make it animated in the way
That's what I
that
was gonna
this
say.
does.
I want it for everything because what Invincible does that the DC direct-to-video animated movies very rarely do and tend to fail at when they try is actually taking the look of the comic and animating it. And this
Mhm.
feels like, again, I'm saying a lot of things that sound stupid in my head, but are are what I'm thinking of the moment. So I'm gonna say them, and hopefully this doesn't sound like the dumbest thing I've ever said. This is this is like American anime. What I mean is, we should have lots of these. We should have direct adaptations, and I don't know how different this is from the comic because I've not read the comic. And by the way, I think I'm glad that I didn't read the comic first because I was able to be shocked by that last scene, the way it wanted me to, and I appreciated that. But it feels anyway like direct adaptation, even if it's not, because I haven't read that material. But it's like what a lot of animes do with manga, where it's like you just take a manga series and you take the style that it was drawn in, and you translate it to episodic shows, and when it's done, it's done. And I don't know how long this will go, but there's just no reason that we can't do a bunch of this with comics,
Mhm.
like the Japanese do with mangas.
Yeah, for sure. Well, one thing I was going to ask you is, do you think the show is part of why Disney's doing the Spider-Man freshman year show?
I couldn't tell you, but that's a good thought. Maybe so.
And I don't know how much you looked into the design stuff they put out for that.
I didn't realize that they showed any concept art or anything.
Yeah, so they showed like the entire cast, all the villain cast, all the stuff,
Oh, neat.
and like their Peter Parker. Uh, he's got like the same outfit as the '60s Spider-Man cartoon. Doc Ock is just straight up like Stanley Ditko Doc Ock put into animation.
Oh, that's really
And then you
cool.
have you have some other villains that feel more like how Homecoming would reinvent them, where it's like a more like person like do it yourself design for them, kind of like how Vulture is in that.
Yeah.
But I just made me think of that
I don't
because
want to get too far off
there's
the
some
beaten
of that.
path with
Yeah,
that,
no, of course.
but when you said that, does it look like it's going to be aimed more at adults?
Uh, I assume they're probably gonna try to hit both ways the same way that like the MCU does in general.
Yeah. Hopefully so. That's what it should do.
Mhm.
But yeah, I hadn't had that thought. Maybe that is part of why they're making them.
Yeah, and it gave us Osborns with the lines in their hair. So
Yay! That's awesome. But anyway, yeah, my biggest takeaway is why can't we do this with more stuff, like
Mhm.
with more comics? This made me go, I kind of wish Walking Dead had been animated,
Oh yeah, no, and that would look really good in animation if you took that art
right?
style.
It's real
Yeah,
stylized. How do you feel about the animation in this in general?
it's pretty good. Um,
I think so too.
yeah, there's so much just kind of TV animation now, where well, and it also helps that most like animated stuff for adults is like crappy Family Guy knockoffs.
Yeah,
Um, but it's
it's
nice to see,
easy to stand out if you do something serious.
yeah, and it's nice to not feel like, just your kind of typical like Adult Swim animation. It's a step above that.
Well, I was gonna say
It's a
this
step above like the DC animated movies.
this felt to me like a combination just stylistically between those two things. Actually, that's what I was gonna say. Is you take like a, I don't know, like an Archer or something, and you put it with the DC direct to video animated movies, and you get this kind of style. I think like it does feel like it's looking at some of the comedies and the jokier stuff.
Mhm. Yeah, no, this kind of like these two things don't look the same in any way, but it kind of reminds me of One of my favorite shows from this year, Smiling Friends, where they just kind of, it's very like simple animation, but they're pushing it a little bit more to be like, let's try to make this a little bit better than the competition.
Well, and by the way, you kept talking about that show. I watched 3 minutes of that and I couldn't do it. Could not deal with that show. I don't know if I'll ever go back and try that.
Oh, that's awesome.
Ugh. But anyway.
Oh, I think I know the exact scene that you turned off on.
I didn't get very far in. There weren't very many scenes.
So you probably didn't even make it to Mike, yeah.
We're jumping around too much. My apologies. But this was this reminded me of those DC animated movies partly because of some of the animation choices. Like in that second episode, they'd get into some 3D animation, and when Invincible is like flying through the aliens and blowing up stuff, and all of that, and so they do some kind of more ambitious things like that, like those movies would. But also because of the runtime of the episodes, it feels really ambitious because every episode is almost the length of one of those movies.
Yeah, no, 2 episodes of these are probably longer than one of those.
Oh, but well, by a lot, because those generally aren't allowed to be longer than 70 or 75 minutes, and these are 48 to 50.
Oh, okay. I was thinking they were all 90. I wasn't thinking that they were all 70.
They're almost never allowed to go to 90, which is the reason that you've had to have a couple of 2-parters.
Yeah. Oh, okay. For some reason I thought it was they all had to be 90. I don't know why.
There are maybe a couple that got away with the length that long, but the majority of them are like somewhere between 70 and 80.
Which, yeah, I guess makes sense because part 1 and part 2 of Dark Knight Returns is only about 2.5 hours. Like, it's about the length of a Nolan Batman movie.
And I've reviewed a couple that are the length of one of these episodes. So these watched long to me just because they were animated.
Yeah. Because it's not very often we get hour-long animated projects.
That really surprised me. Because I was like,
and I assumed it would be half hour.
The first 2 episodes, I'll have this knocked out in an hour, and then I looked at the length and I was like, that's shocking. And then everything about it watched like a live action show. So I say it felt longer just because it was animated. It was harder to not like look at my watch and be like, okay, I really would have thought it was over by now because I'm just used to the pacing being a little bit different in animated things. And there's no reason it has to be. That's what I like about the show. The other thing that obviously works really well about this, I should mention real quick in case I forget to, is just the end. They push it to the nines and they talk about it directly in the episodes, but I think in the story, but I think you have to, is just the coming of age thing, the puberty metaphor, and just the central idea of when you're a kid, you feel invincible, so of course that's what he calls himself. All of that is really good. The dad that teaches his son to fly like he's teaching him how to drive a car is a scene I've not seen. And that was wonderful.
No, that's really good.
It does one thing wrong.
Oh, what's that?
There's one thing in that scene that goes too far. It's of course like a dad teaching his kid how to drive. And all of the terminology and everything is specific to flying until you get to the end of the scene and you have the obligatory moment where he doesn't know how to stop. He's about to crash. And he's like, land. And the kid's like, I don't know how to land. And he says, stop! He's flying. He's in midair. Like, he's not going to be able to stop. Like, you'd brake in a car, but if you're careening toward the ground, you can't stop. As a nitpick, that is the only thing that doesn't work about that scene, but it's a wonderful scene.
At least you didn't say, like, park your butt on the ground.
But how did you feel about how the kind of puberty metaphor of it is handled?
No, that's the stuff I really liked. Like, that's part of that SpiderMan stuff that I was really into. Obviously, it's a bit different because it's, like SpiderMan if he was Superman's son.
Yeah.
Not for that exact scenario, but all of that
stuff
stuff
is so weird to
really
adapt
good.
this now. right? Because in some ways it feels real modern, and in some ways it does feel like it's 15 years behind, because it is, at least in comics, right? Like, Superman has a son in comics now. And so this felt fresher before that happened. But now, but it's weird because I guess you could also look at it as an analog for that whole thing retroactively. So it's like everything in this does come from DC, except the archetype is a Spider-Man.
Yeah, he's no longer Spider-Man. He's now that character. I don't remember what his name is. But John Kent, yeah. I've only read him in DC, so I keep forgetting Superman has a son just in regular continuity.
Yeah. They keep aging him up and...
Oh, weird. Comics are so weird, man.
I loved him initially. What Jurgens does with him is great, and I mean, Jurgens is not the best writer in the world, but he invented that character. He did some great things with him. My big complaint with John Kent was always sometimes he's like 8 and sometimes he's like 13. That was the problem with him under Dan Jurgens. But also the first run of Super Sons is really good. Him and Damian.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay, yeah.
I thought I'd hate because I don't like Damian, but
yeah, no, Damian sucks.
that was fun. I'm surprised that hasn't been an animated movie yet.
Oh, it is one, isn't it? Isn't that one of the ones they announced at Comic-Con?
Oh, is it really? I didn't know that. I hadn't heard that yet.
Or maybe they gave like a lineup of what like their next few are, and I want to say that's one of them.
Of course,
if somebody in the chat knows,
of course they're
post
making
it.
that.
But I think that's one of the things they said.
Hey, real quick, I missed a super chat from Senior Sticks.
Yep.
$2, thanks, buddy. He said, Cap, Rex won't get there. He exists for the greater plot. Okay, well, no spoilers or nothing, folks, for us, because I want to take everything as I get it, but not that that's a big deal or anything. But yeah, that actually doesn't totally shock me if he doesn't get developed any more than he is. I also have that thing with the show where I'm expecting that, with the exception of a couple of characters, anybody could die at any time.
Yeah. No, I initially wondered if some of the characters in your kind of like Teen Titans Doom Patrol team were gonna die.
I had the same thing, by the way, that it's Teen Titans and Doom Patrol. Again, only looking at DC. I think the pilot, if we can call it a pilot, I don't know how the show was made, the first episode does a really good job of establishing the comic rules and like where it sticks with kind of standard modern comic stuff, and when it like again, like maybe Bronze Age to modern, and when it is going to break those rules. So you have things like characters are able to have secret identities. I don't know if I buy the reason for that, but I appreciate establishing it. Like this is a world that is pretty realistic in that human beings are very fragile, and if an alien with super strength punches you, you will die. But they do a wonderful job of giving us contrast for that. Where let me say this real quick. The aliens show up, and they're just mowing people down, and people are, like, exploding in the street. And I'm like, for a minute I was thinking it was watching a little bit too much like Netflix Castlevania or something, where if you look at a person, they're just a bloody mess. Like, people are too fragile. And then I felt that way partly because we got that right after the end of the last episode, because I watched them, in rapid succession, where you see Omni-Man walk in and just go to town on their Justice League. And then in the same scene where like 330-something people die, you also see one of our heroes who doesn't have super strength punch one of the aliens, and nothing really happens to him. He just gets knocked out. So like we have the contrast. Where like some people are super strong and they'll rip you to shreds, and some people aren't, and you'll just get beaten up in a hallway. And so I appreciate the contrast in understanding what the rules of the universe are.
Yeah, exactly. Because especially with comic book stuff, there can be like a lot of cheating with that. Like you'll have Justice League animated movies where whatever villain can punch Superman, but he can also punch Batman up against a wall, and Batman's fine because it's they got that kind of comic booky logic. while this is taking that stuff and applying more of a real world consequence to it.
Yep.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Like I said, I do feel like the secret identities in this are a little too easy. This is such a difficult balance to, like, balancing act to achieve, and it mostly manages it in, like, we're going to be realistic in these ways, but we're going to be real absurd in these other ways. I don't buy Eve's whole explanation of if people don't want to see superheroes in school, they won't see them. Because, well, what about the kid that does, though? Like, what about the kid that sees a teenager, like a clear teenager superhero on TV, and then goes, hey, that kind of reminds me of this girl I go to school with? Or, more likely, or, like, even more likely, hey, she's my age, I wonder if she goes to my school. I would think that would happen, and then, like, kids would just walk around. So, it's a conceit, like, I get that, but that combined with, there's all this crazy stuff going on at Omni-Man's house, and no one knows he's Omni-Man.
Yeah, like Invincible's constantly like falling up and down in their backyard.
Yeah, well, and they do the convenient thing where characters, it's the Smallville Kent Farm thing, right? Where a character that knows that Clark has superpowers will drive up while he's using them and see him do those things, and it's fine because that character is already familiar with it. But if Lex drives up, Clark is going to conveniently stop doing whatever he was doing before Lex gets into his line of sight, or ostensibly before that happens. And this has that too, where the Shield guy like comes up to the house and sees the kid like flying. What's his name? Mark. Like hovering above the house, and I'm like, the neighbors never see this. Like, how are they? What do they think's going on with the holes in the yard? Stuff like that.
Yeah, no, exactly. Well, and the thing with what you were saying with the teenage girl, Eve, it's almost like kind of having their cake and eating it too, where they've put in the more real world stuff into it, but then they also then have to find a way to have the Clark Kent glasses, you know?
Yeah. Cedar Sticks $2 super chat says, like the police, they see the uniform usually. Yeah, but usually is the problem. I would just think that occasionally, like, I actually buy it to some degree, like kind of a sleight of hand thing or misdirection with like a magic trick. I would buy it for like maybe potentially 90-95% of people, but you could do whole stories in this where you have the one person who's just paying attention.
Well, I guess the difference there is that police are just kind of like people that exist, while superheroes are more like celebrities.
Yeah, where you'd be. That's a really good point. Can you have that idea in the same show where you have the guy who makes the costumes saying kids are going to be doodling you in the corners of their notebooks?
Yeah, Mark
I don't
Hamill
know.
in a mode.
I don't know if you can have. I kept thinking that too. It was their Edna Mode. Edna Mode. I thought that scene was great, where he was trying to like slough off a not very good costume that he couldn't get anybody to buy.
Yeah,
That was great.
no, exactly. Well, I don't know if Mark Hamill comes back for this, but again, it's just they fill in so many just not like giant celebrities, but like those kinds of people.
Was that Mark Hamill?
Yeah, it was Mark Hamill.
I missed that too. I've been really careful not to go looking too much into this, because every time I find, like, I started looking at a cast list, and then there were characters on it I hadn't gotten to yet. And I was like, well, I don't want anything spoiled while I'm watching the show. And I had that with synopses too, where I was like, sometimes before a show I'll just refresh myself to make sure I got my head in the game, right? And so I'll look at real quick, like movie synopses or something. And with this, it was difficult not to like accidentally see synopses of other episodes and stuff. So I had to be kind of careful about that. So that's why I'm having to go completely from memory for names of characters, because I'm afraid if I look at a list, things will be spoiled for me.
See, I think I just have like a really good ear for voice acting. So for me, it was and Amazon has that thing too, where you click on it and you like have like all the actors in the scene.
Look, I usually do, but some of the characters you're talking about, I just feel like some of those actors did a pretty good job of disappearing.
No, and I agree with that, but I also like I find even like for actors like that really disappear into a role. It's like, oh hey, it's that. Like there's just certain things I can pick up with
Things
people.
usually jump out at me, but also in this case, I wasn't looking for anybody. I guess I was just kind of with the material so much. I didn't really care who the voice actors were. I never have that.
Hmm.
But, like,
No, and
I kept watching this like a live action show.
yeah. Well, for me it was like, oh hey, like Sandra Oh's in this. Oh hey, Walter Goggins is in this. Oh, Gillian Jacobs is in this. Like it was just watching it. It was like, oh, like this person's in this. I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Sorry, I'm just looking at some comments here. Mystical Green Beanie, and thanks for watching live, guys. The reason the violence works in the comic is because the world feels like a Silver Age style superhero universe, but with real world consequences. I think the show pulled that off too. Yeah, like I said, it's kind of more of a taste issue than anything for me, where I'm just like, I don't know, does it need to be that bloody? It's taken me out just a little bit. But I know I'll adjust to it.
Yeah, well, and like obviously that's not something that like I typically have because like I'm very much like like I don't like think twice about violence and things, so it's never that like I'm never thinking about whether stuff has to justify it, you know what I mean? It's just kind of I don't know. I'm used to just violent stuff.
You can say it. I'm a prude about this.
No.
I know what you're thinking.
No. These eggshells are perfectly fine for walking.
I just...
No, I can understand where you're coming from. It's just obviously like, I don't know. Like...
And again, some of it is taste stuff, and some of it is just like, is everything gelling to create a piece? You know what I mean? So like,
Yeah.
I have this with plenty of other things too, where it's like, is your sex gratuitous? Is your violence gratuitous? Is your language gratuitous? Like with these things, a little can go a long way. It's not because it's inherently bad. It's because too much of anything can really take me out. Like,
of course.
Excessive sappiness is bad. You know what I mean? Excessive wholesomeness can be bad. Like, you can have gratuitous wholesomeness. Like, absolutely
I know about that.
Yeah, you and I are gonna make a career out of watching stuff with excessive wholesomeness.
Damn straight.
We're at an hour, Austin. What else do we need to bring up about this show? Again, I'm really digging on it. I'm excited to watch more of it. Let me say real quick, the mystery is so intriguing.
About what's going on with Omni-Man?
With Omni-Man, yeah, absolutely. I love how cloaked in shadow all of that is. And sometimes I might be irritated that with certain things like that like I know more than my protagonist does about a thing. This works fine because it's like jumping over to the villain, and I don't know 100% if he is going to be the villain, but everything is tracking right now for that to be the case. There's and nobody's spoiling anything. Nobody tell me. This is me having seen 2 episodes saying what I think is happening. But it watches like there's a lot of kind of breadcrumbs and clues that suggest that he's not being like mind controlled or under any kind of duress or anything. The first time that we get a sense that something weird is going on with him is in the first episode when he asks his wife, I think it's the first episode, if she's questioning him, and I'm like, that was a weird word choice. That was almost trite, right? When he's like, "Are you questioning me?" And I was like, "What's happening here?" And that was weird. I wasn't sure about it. And then there's a couple other things like that here and there where. What I mean is there's a lot of subtext. There's layered things that you watch one way on a first viewing and another way on a second viewing once you've seen him rip apart the superheroes. Like, when he punches his son real hard the first time, is he teaching him a lesson? or is he testing him because he knows he's going to have to fight his own kid later? Like, there's questions like that I've got. And one of the things I'm really enjoying about it is just all the questions I'm excited to see being answered. And the thing is confident enough, I know it has answers for all of those things.
Well, yeah, the part where his dad punches him, I just thought it was relatable because it reminded me when that happened to me. But no, all of that stuff is.
Can I stop you for a second?
Yeah.
Look, everybody, we're gonna talk about the Batgirl thing on Thursday on the Captain Logan show. Okay, my apologies. It's gonna be a couple of days. If I could have stopped everything and just gone live and talked about that, I would have. But we have to fulfill the request. That's what we're doing tonight. I had a prior engagement earlier this evening, or I would have done a special Captain Logan show on it now.
Well, it's made worse because this has J.K. Simmons, right?
I didn't even think about that. That whole thing is bizarre. It's a movie that's already made, and we're apparently never going to see it. It's going to be very interesting to talk about, and that's apparently part of a whole even larger thing going on with Discovery and Warner Brothers. Thursday, guys, you're just gonna have to wait a couple of days. Anyway, Austin.
No, chat. Everybody in chat, make a video of the Omni-Man killing the Justice League scene, but put like the people involved with the Batgirl movie over the Justice League characters' heads, and then send it to us, and whoever has the best video will win a prize.
That's amazing. I'm not promising a prize, but that's
it could be a no prize.
It's a no prize.
I didn't say what the prize was. It could be a thumbs up on Messenger. I don't know.
Okay, so we're not talking about that right now. We're gonna go ahead and finish this video. Austin, what else do you want to bring up about the show?
There was a thing I was thinking of.
Sorry, I stopped.
No, it's okay. It's okay. What were we talking about? I can't remember. I'm lost on it. Do you have anything else you want to bring up?
No, I don't think so. Like I said, I'm very, very intrigued. Mm-hmm. Before we started broadcasting, the way you were talking about the show, I kind of got the feeling that I enjoyed it more than you did. And as we've been talking, I don't know if that's true.
Yeah, I'm not sure, because for me it was like, I think you probably did, because the second episode for me was more like I'm not as into this. Like, it's pretty good, but it's not as good as the first episode. And I don't think you had that as much as I did, but...
No, that's true. But
overall, I think we both agree this show's really good.
It's really good, yeah. It's just, you've been a little bit more positive on it than I expected that you would be after we talked before.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's fair, too. I mean, we only just kind of talked generally, and that was kind of the place I ended with. Obviously, talking about it, like, as a whole, there's definitely more positives.
I don't yet know what was the point of the, like, space cop guy at the end of the second episode, the space recruiter
Seth
guy.
Rogen.
That seems funny, but it kind of came out of nowhere.
Producer on this?
Say again.
Said, isn't he a producer on this? Maybe he was like, you need to give me a role.
Well, like you said before we got on video, I assume that guy is going to come back at some point. But
yeah, I could see that going either way. I just remembered the point I was going to make.
Oh, good.
Which is, the whole thing with Omni-Man, and I think the reason why it doesn't feel like we know more than the protagonist does is that it's, in a sense, obviously it's a very different thing, but it's kind of that old Hitchcock thing that he talked about where you have two people talking and then you cut down and you can see like a bomb underneath them that's going to go off, where you technically do know more than the protagonist does, but you're waiting for the rug to be pulled out on the main character. So there's the element of suspense.
And it helps that we don't know much.
Exactly. We don't know too much. We just know that something's going to go down. So you're just kind of waiting like, oh my god, when's the shoe going to drop? They have like a knife over the character, and you're kind of waiting for when it's going to come into play.
Yeah, and I think it's really well crafted because think about it the other way. It makes sense that it's as much of a mystery for Mark as it is that he wouldn't begin to suspect his dad at all. Mm-hmm. But if you're going to throw us like clues even in scenes that Mark is in that something weird is going on with his dad. There's kind of no way that we wouldn't be suspicious even if he's not. I don't think they could surprise us with it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see what I'm saying? So if they
Yeah.
tried that, once we found out, it'd be like, well, yeah, I saw that coming from a mile away. So like, I think they know that. I think Kirkman
Yeah.
knows that, and that's partly why he's letting us in on that part of it. But we don't know why. We don't even know if he's totally in control of his own faculties. Like, we don't actually know anything except he's the one that did it.
Mm-hmm. One, if this were a Disney Plus show, he would be revealed to be the villain in the second last episode, Stinger, and then we'd have no development of that because the last episode would just be punching. So in that way, you're kind of just developing
and it would
more.
feel sudden, right? It would feel like he would be giving a completely different performance all of a sudden.
Yeah, exactly.
Like a mole in 24. I keep bringing up 24. Josh, $5 super chat. Thanks, man. Alan the Alien, that's that character. Seth Rogen's character is awesome and my favorite character in the comics. Very cool to see you guys talk about this. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna watch more of it and hopefully talk about it again. I always hesitate on that and don't promise it because
we said it with The Boys and then
keeping
neither of us moved on.
Well, The Boys is a little bit of a different case, but keeping everything in your brain to then come on while you're in the middle of a bunch of other things. I'm just saying, like, season overviews are hard. Like, I usually, to do a good job of that, feel like I need 2 watches of a whole season, and building that into my schedule is really difficult. That's the problem with it. So, like, if people don't mind my giving a season of a thing 1 watch and giving first impressions that aren't super articulate, I can do that. But, like, I don't always feel great about it because I always feel like I'm missing stuff, and so, I don't know. Like, I get self-conscious about it. Like,
no, I understand that. I mean, when we did WandaVision, I think I saw that like 4 times altogether before we finally talked about it.
I haven't kept doing reviews of all of those shows. Some of it's I haven't been invested in a lot of them.
Mm-hmm. But then Falcon and Winter Soldier was 2, and I struggled to get through it the second time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, so did I. So anyway, that's why with a lot of these things, I'll kind of check in here and there and like do an initial just how we felt about thing. Even though this was over an hour, but there's a lot going on in this.
Yeah, exactly. We'll come in and we'll review each episode, and it'll all be an hour and a half review because we'll talk about random stuff in the middle of it.
And then people will be like, I think maybe you should have just done the one, the whole season twice. That might have been a little faster for you guys. Well, anyway, but yeah, so this was really good. And it's, like I said, just a thing I wish we would do with more stuff.
Mm-hmm.
This is how more superhero shows need to be made.
Yeah, and it would be nice to have more.
Just...
I mean, here's hoping. We got this, and we got a new Spider-Man show. We got a new Batman and Superman show. Like, hopefully, we're getting into an era again where we have more of these things that are of quality.
Well, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but I need it for more like independent adult stuff also, so that we can keep,
of course.
Like pushing the envelope for animation that's not just kiddie stuff or crude comedy in this country.
Yeah. Well, like I said, the big one I want is Hellboy. So,
like every time there's and I'm gonna have this so much more now, having watched a couple episodes of the show. Every time there's a new adaptation of comics that I see advertised, I'm gonna be like, how come we couldn't have just done that in animation? Especially when it gets lukewarm reviews and gets panned after the first season. Because I could be wrong about this, but it's hard not to imagine that if some of these things are done in animation in the first place, they might be a little better written. Because when they're that's just my instinct, because you're looking more directly at the source material and wanting it to be like the comics. You know what I mean? So like, maybe translating more, maybe not. Maybe you'll get. I mean, it's not like all the adaptation with the DC animated movies have been good, but we haven't done this a lot with series yet. So just my instinct is, maybe if we'd done Y the Last Man this way, that would have been a better show. You know, it's et cetera, et cetera. So I just want to see this done with more stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why couldn't Paper Girls be done this way? I haven't watched that show yet, but I'm hearing not great things.
Yeah, well, and then you go like, okay, there's certain characters I'd rather see in animation. Like, I'd rather get a animated series of Batgirl than an actual like live action movie. Like, either make it animated or don't release it at all.
On that note, I'll see you guys Thursday to talk about the Batgirl fiasco and more. So much stuff happened this last month where I took a hiatus from the Captain Logan show. I picked the absolute worst month of the year to do that. There's been so much news. I did come back last week and do a watch through of some trailers, so I have weighed in on a few Comic-Con announcements at least, but there's a bunch of stuff that folks I'm sure are going to want me to talk about on Thursday and in the coming weeks, so stay tuned. I'm working on, not promising this yet, but working on trying to get the Captain Logan show back to twice a week, because there seems to be enough stuff to deal with that it would make sense to do that. I will do that real soon if it's possible. And in the meantime, Austin and I are going to be doing requests. So join us on Friday, will ya? We're going to be doing the first 2 volumes of Star Wars Legacy, which was requested quite a while back by one of our patrons, and Ian McKee, and I have reviewed a volume of that years ago, but we're going to go back from the beginning and do the first 2, and we'll emphasize that second volume since I have talked about the first before. I've actually read the first like 40 or 50 issues of that now. I was going to do one big video on all of that, which was a really bad idea, and I just couldn't keep everything straight, and then I didn't end up getting to it, and so I was like, once again, I'm gonna have to go back to the beginning of this, and it ended up being like Injustice, Austin, where I've read the first trade of that like 4 or 5 times.
Yeah, well, and then we did it, and it was like, oh, we're gonna do more of this, and then that movie came out, and it was like, I don't want to have to look at Injustice stuff.
Yeah, is it on the list?
It is on the list, yeah. That is something. I'm glad that after she was in that crappy movie, Gillian Jacobs got to be in this. She's the woman who plays Eve. She got to be in like one of the worst DC movies, and then got to go over to be in this. She's Harley.
Oh, she's great in this.
Yeah, no, she's really good in this. That's an actress I like quite a bit.
That's one of the things we didn't talk about. Is some of the names are really fun. I love Duplicate. That's just genius. That's really good.
My favorite name is Robot.
I like that too, though. I like that his name is just generically Robot.
Just Robot, yeah.
I don't use screws. I have magnetic interlocks.
Yeah, and Quinto's great. No, just the whole cast all around. Fantastic.
Thanks a lot for watching, guys. We'll see you again real soon. I was Captain Logan, and this was Austin, the Day Ghost.
Goodbye, everybody.
Later, folks.